Welcome back to the channel. In this interview today is a very powerful one. A young lady is sharing her story for the first time, and it does involve some adult situations, so just a bit of a fair warning there. But I promise you, her story, it definitely resonated with me, and I'm sure it will with you also. But however, it shows the strength that we have inside of us to get past and get beyond anything. So without further ado, let's get right to it. So we have here someone I just met, but I feel like I've known for a long time. Her name is Steph, and her story, she's going to share her story about fading and then eventually leaving Jehovah's Witness religion or cult, we should say. And
Cool.
I don't want to hold up any time. Steph, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm well, and thank you for being on. I
Thanks
appreciate it.
for having me.
For sure, for sure. Let's just get right to it. We're not gonna hold up anybody's time. We're gonna get right to it. Give us your background a little bit on how you were affiliated with Jehovah's Witnesses.
So I've been a well, shouldn't say been. I was a Jehovah's Witness probably from the age of about 2 or 3. So it's really all I know. I'm gonna be 50 this year. So my mother was baptized around that time. And the story goes, my father wanted her to study, thinking it will make her a good wife. Well, he ended up leaving, and when he ended up leaving for his third and final wife, she became a witness as well.
Okay.
So my mother was a single mom of 4 kids, and we were all baptized, but one of my younger brothers, he never got baptized. So growing up in the 80s, it was the whole 1914. And for any of us who are Generation X could say, it was embedded in us hearing 1914. And so it was always, around the corner, and any day now. And so I remember as far back, excuse me, that, the moment I was able to, understand 1914, I was obsessed with time, and
Yeah.
I was obsessed with the calculator, you know, excuse me. And so I would always calculate to see how much time we had left,
Right.
because, anytime we went into these meetings, and I'm sure you understand, it was never nothing positive. It was always filled with something dark, like be prepared and hold on to your faith to Jehovah. And it was just like they were getting ready for us to go fight somewhere. You know what I mean? Like they're gonna come and take us, you
Yeah, I
know.
remember that. Yeah.
And and as a kid, you're sitting here thinking like, what's
Mhm.
going to happen, and watching and reading those books, the yellow one, the my Bible
My book
stories,
about, yeah. Oh yeah.
which should be banned,
I agree.
and that red one, the Revelation book, that one too, you know what I mean? And so, we're kids and we're reading these books and you're going to these meetings, which was far too many, right?
Right. Right.
We weren't fortunate like the ones now that they have this new light, right? We had to sit through all 5 of them. And excuse me, we had the Sunday meeting, we had the meeting in the week, which was from like 7 to 9. And then
Hmm.
we had the Bible study on Friday nights. And then
Okay.
sure, we had the Saturday morning ones. And so, for those people that were super, devoted, they go to service after any of those meetings or before. So I
I
think
used to
for
hate going out service after the meeting. Oh
I,
man.
you know what, there were some people that I would go to Kingdom Hall because sometimes I don't know if you guys had that where with the congregations it would be mixed with like maybe the English one and the Spanish one. So we would have to
Okay.
rotate the times, right? So we would have
Yeah.
excuse me. So we would have like the morning one for 6 months, and then we'd switch off for the afternoon for 6 months. So it would give
Yeah.
some people time to maybe sleep in a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, and so I just remember it was just so much time being spent in these meetings and going to service. And when you're a kid, you don't want to you don't even understand what you're writing when you're writing your time. And I would
Yeah.
lie. I never was honest in those times.
Yeah, I think a lot of people doing that. We trying to make it look good.
Yeah. I did, I would just tag along, and half the time we didn't speak. We just
Yeah,
had to follow the adults. And we'd sit
yeah,
there and watch all these kids play, and we're sitting there, hoping we don't knock on our classmate, because that was not fun.
yeah, for sure.
And so I think, in overall, like my whole childhood was just spent just, growing up and just listening to everything that was 1914, and it was just so embedded in our brains. And all we heard was around the corner and Armageddon and tribulation. And basically the message was obey or die, you know?
Yep,
And so for me, it was just confusing trying to understand how we had, a God that was loving and merciful, but then and on the other side it was just like, but if you don't obey or do these things, you're going to die. He's going to destroy you. And
yeah,
as a kid going to school, you'd see your classmates, you see your teachers, you can be at the park, you can be anywhere, and you would look at these people and say you're going to die
yeah,
you know and so
yeah,
you look at everybody around you as, well, if you're not a Jehovah's Witness, you're all going to die. And so that made no sense to me. And so, my childhood was just spent like that, just being obsessed with time and just, wondering, am I going to grow up to be 18? Am I going to grow up to be, get my driver's license or get married? And for us, when that information is embedded in you, it kind of just sets the path of where your life's going to go. You
yeah,
know, why bother getting an education?
yeah.
Why bother
That's
getting a career?
no, you. Sorry to cut you off, but you are on point with that. You live in constant anxiety.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were one of those kids, but like severe thunderstorms or tornado warnings, did they like trigger something for you, thinking like this might
All
be
the time.
Armageddon?
All the
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Every
yeah.
time, the weather would change, it was like sudden, like a weather change. It was like storming. It was like, this is it. It's coming. And I remember, like, when there was
Woo.
a war in another country, I'm like, it's coming. And you would think, like,
Yeah,
when they say around the corner, you're living, it's really high anxiety, thinking at any moment, because being told that it's going to come like a thief in the night. You're going to
that's
sit
right.
there, and I didn't know, and I would think, like, how would Jehovah protect us if one day I'm here and my mom's at the store and the world's going to end, you know?
Right,
And
right.
so, excuse me. And one of the things I would always think about as a kid was I would just think of random things, like I would think, like, okay, so if Armageddon comes and Jehovah destroys everything, what are we going to do if for toilet paper? What are we going to do for shampoo? I would think of just random things.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
how's Jehovah going to provide these things? You know what I mean? Like, are we going to be living off the land? We're not going to be able to have pizza. Like, I would just think of like these random things as a kid. You know what I mean? Thinking all this is going to be taken away, you
yeah.
know?
All you're thinking
And
of is normalcy. You're thinking of normalcy, like everything is normal, and when this happens, you know, all that stuff is for a kid's mind. That's expected to think like that. You know what I mean? Like the stuff that you expect to be normal won't be normal anymore. So it's like, how are we gonna handle this? How are we gonna handle that? I get
yeah.
that. Yeah,
And just, and that was just basically my whole childhood. And, the other thing was just having to be this perfect Jehovah's Witness, because
hmm,
back then it was, you would hear about these, bad association, because there were different
hmm,
types of Jehovah's Witness in the Kingdom Homes. And we knew, what I mean, you had those that were just
hmm.
super righteous, didn't watch anything PG-13 or didn't listen to
Right.
any secular music. It was just, kingdom melodies, and they wouldn't even say the word darn it. It was just like fiddlesticks. So, we had those types of Jehovah's Witness
Yeah,
that it was,
yeah,
what I mean, like they were decent. They were just like, we just want
mm,
to serve and everything. And then you had some people that, we're just trying our best. I mean, we're trying to make those meetings and trying to be,
yeah,
examples. And for me, I would always hear this gossip around people and be like, well, don't talk to them because they're not strong. And so me being who I was and just being a really sensitive kid and just being naturally anxious on top of hearing we're going to be destroyed, I just felt like I have to be perfect. I have to be
yeah,
perfect at all times. And I didn't want, you know, to be in a situation where anyone said anything bad about me. So
yeah.
you want to be that example. So you find yourself getting baptized like me at 14 years old, you know,
Okay.
not even understanding
14.
what I was doing.
Yeah, you're 14 getting baptized. Okay. So yeah, yeah. Oh, we.
Yeah, didn't understand it. I just knew that people were like, "Yeah, you got bad." I'm like, "Yeah, you're happy? Cool, I'm happy."
Yeah.
And then setting that path of, being auxiliary pioneer and then being a regular pioneer. And, I went to pioneer school and I did all that by the time I graduated high school, and
Wow.
did
Wow.
I, excuse me, and did I enjoy going to pioneer school? No.
Oh, you
I
did
was,
not enjoy it.
I just felt like it was something that I had to do. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
felt like the path that we had to take, we're not set up for, you know, p- life skills. We're not set up for that.
For
We're
sure.
set up to serve Jehovah until the end of times, and we're just here temporary. And, everything we're going to want in life, we wait for the new system, right? Everything was
Yeah.
wait to the new system. You want to get married? Wait to the new system. You want to have kids? Wait to the new system. So it's kind of like when you're being told that and it's embedded, constantly. And I feel like this organization that it's a cult, it's just mind control. They're telling you these things, and a lot of people that are Jehovah's Witness now they come from a generations of family. So they don't know nothing but this, you know,
Yeah.
and it's easy for someone from the outside thinking, well, why didn't you get out? Why didn't you, what do we know? You know,
Yeah.
and
When you're born in, you can't really, you don't have a say much. You
no,
didn't have a say in it. It was kind of like this is what's expected and that's it. And
yeah,
we look to our parents.
yeah. Yeah.
Any
And my mom,
religion, any belief, you go to you believe what your parents teach you,
yeah,
because as a child, but it's funny. I want to go back real quick to 14 years old because I was about that age too when I got baptized. And it's funny how you can dedicate your life at that age with no life experience, no life skills, nothing like that, no thinking abilities, not gonna say no thinking abilities, but very limited. You're 14. You can't
yeah.
get a driver's license. You
Mm-mm.
can't, you can't buy alcohol. It's just certain things that you can't do. You can't vote, even though they don't vote, but still, it's just certain things that you can't do because you're not of age. So why would it be of age and to make that kind of decision so serious, with so many consequences behind it? If you decide to check out on it.
Yeah, because once you're baptized, any mistake you make, anything you do, you're going to get disfellowshipped. I wasn't
Mhm.
aware of that. I didn't know.
Yeah,
I wasn't aware of the consequences of any action if by me getting baptized. I thought I was going to get baptized and bam, I'm hoping I'm
right.
going to continue being good and hope I make it. Because that's the other thing of being a Jehovah's Witness. Doesn't mean you're guaranteed to live forever in paradise. You have to follow
That's
these
right.
policies.
Yeah, I
And
remember
that
that scripture they used to use that probably you may be
probably,
concealed. Probably.
yeah. So it's like,
Yeah.
let's add that to the anxiety of, I
I know,
hope we
right?
make it.
I
You know
know,
what I
right?
mean?
Yeah.
So it's like we're sacrificing all of this. We're doing all these works, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? All these policies we have to follow because back then, unlike this new light that everyone gets, luckily from this governing body, we had to, for the men that you guys couldn't have beards.
Right.
Women had to wear dresses and skirts, and
Yeah.
there was, and being disfellowshipped, it was serious. You know what I mean? It was a
Yeah.
death sentence,
Yeah.
and so there was too much to, I always felt that no matter what I did, it was just not going to be enough, but I was sitting there just trying, so that
Yeah.
was pretty much just my entire childhood. And I continued doing the best I could. And, was I perfect teenager? No. I wasn't one of those kids that was preaching in school. I was too embarrassed. I didn't want
Hmm.
people knowing I
Yeah.
was a Jehovah's Witness, and it's, I remember being in school and even in through middle school, people would pledge allegiance, the holiday parties, you know, prom, we couldn't go to, and I remember one time in eighth grade, I was pulled by my counselor at school, and she wanted to know why I wasn't going to the eighth grade graduation party.
Mm.
And she goes, "Are you having problems at home?" And I said, "No." And she goes, "Well, you didn't get a ticket to go." And I couldn't tell, like, I can't go because I'm a Jehovah's Witness.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I lied. I just said, "Oh, I
Yeah.
don't feel like going," but I
Mm.
wanted to go.
Yeah.
You know what I
It,
mean?
it's yeah, it's a shame how you had to suppress who you were.
Yeah.
You know, you had to really suppress your identity. If you know, even if you knew your identity at all, a lot of us born in didn't even know we had an identity, didn't even know who we
Mhm.
were. But it speaks volumes later in life when you think back on it. Like, you know what? I didn't even like it. I was lying. I didn't want to tell nobody I was a witness. It was already there that this is something wrong with this, but you just, as a kid, again, you just can't, you know. Because
You
I
can't
feel you on
trust
that.
it.
I used to like not want to go in service. I used to hope nobody answered the door. I'd be like, you know, you taught Jehovah and Satan. So I'm like, okay, Satan, please don't let nobody come to the door. And then if nobody comes to the door, I'm sorry, Jehovah. You know what I mean? Like your mind did these mental hoops trying to jump back and forth because you really just want to be a regular kid. That's really all you want to be.
Yeah. And we grew up in the 80s. We missed so many good
Yeah.
cartoons.
Oh, we missed all the Saturday morning cartoons, man. I
We
used to
missed
hear about
everything,
them. Yeah.
you know.
Couldn't watch the Goonies or nothing.
Nothing. I remember, and when people talk to us now, it's kind of like, oh, did you watch this? And, it wasn't only till like, some years back that I started going back and watching everything that I missed as a kid because I'm like, man,
Yeah.
we missed
Yeah.
out so much.
Ain't
But
that something?
yeah,
Wow. Yeah.
all these, and we grew up in the best era in the 80s and we missed so much.
Yeah, I know, right? I know, right? But um, you know, so now did you ever experience being disfellowship or anybody in your family?
So when I was a teenager, I think it was soon after I got baptized. I think I was about maybe 15, and
Okay.
my brother got his fellowship first, he for fornication,
Okay.
and soon after my mother was disfellowshipped.
Mm.
And I always found it odd because, it was almost immediate after my brother. And so it wasn't
Mm.
because she committed fornication, it wasn't because she did something. It was basically because she ran her mouth. And I think, and we never had that conversation with my mother because it was very uncomfortable for her. But I don't know if she
Okay.
just spoke out against it or something happened. But I also feel that the elders that disfellowshipped her did not do it correctly or by the policies. Because
Okay.
I remember going into the meeting one day with my brother and my mom, and right when we're getting settled, I'm talking to my friends. She immediately grabs, she goes, "We have to go." And of course, as a kid, I'm like, sure, I don't want to go to a meeting. I want to go play. I want to
Mm.
go, do something. And I found out that she was disfellowshipped. And
Mm.
I couldn't understand why, and she never discussed it, but we still continued to go to the meetings. And what was very disappointing seeing that was how people treated us afterwards, because we literally go to the meeting last week and everyone's talking and hugging. And then we go to the store the following week and they act like they don't know us. And so I never liked the idea of shunning because I
Yeah.
couldn't understand how this organization, because that's how they get you. We're a loving organization, but no one tells you if you get baptized and you do anything wrong, you're going to get this fellowship and we'll decide when you come back. You know what I
Right.
mean? It doesn't matter if
Yeah.
you repent or anything, it's the elders' decisions to decide, you know? And so
Yeah.
seeing my mother, being disfellowshipped and we're still going to the meetings and just I didn't like that whole idea and I questioned it. I couldn't understand the idea of being disfellowshipped, but seeing how much she had to suffer and we had to suffer, it was just like it was fear that I
Yeah.
never, wanted to be in that situation and I'm already baptized. And that's when I understood like this is serious. Like you do anything to mess up, like you're
Mm.
gonna get shunned, you know? So it was
Yeah.
just another layer of anxiety that I would get that I'm I'm a teenager and you really
Right.
can't be a normal teenager or do anything because that fear of you're gonna screw up and be known as, bad association. And
Yeah.
so that pretty much, but she ended up getting reinstated. Um, we had gone to
Okay.
a convention and this brother, kind of on the side talked to her and says, if you go to my congregation, we'll reinstate you. We did. She got
Mm.
reinstated.
Wait, he
So
said, wait. He said if you
yeah,
come to our congregation, you'll get reinstated.
yeah, we were at a convention. We were at a convention and,
Wow.
of all the times she wanted to sit in the front, I'm like, you're disfellowship. I don't want to sit in front of all these people. And
Right.
I remember she was looking across, I was sitting next to her, and this elder that we've known, comes, stands next to her, doesn't look towards her, just talks straight
Mm-hmm.
ahead. And he says, if you go to my congregation, I will reinstate you quickly.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so my mother nodded yes. And soon after we went, and she was reinstated within, I believe, a month.
That right there tells you that tell you
Yeah.
right there that it is man made, man ran. They just say that it's
Yes.
man ran. It's not the Holy Spirit makes these. No, they do what they want to do.
Yeah. And I always felt like these elders just had something against her or something. It
Yeah,
didn't sit right with me. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
when we went to this new congregation, it was I didn't have anything, negative about it. I met new friends and, up until, when I turned 18. And so I'm trying not to cry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, don't be
But
sorry.
I know. So when I turned 18, I felt like, okay, I'm pretty proud of my accomplishments and,
Hmm.
I'm in the right path. And I remember um, January of 1994, I was a bridesmaid for a sister in the congregation.
Okay.
And as I'm sitting there, um, I see the son of a sister, right?
Hmm.
And it should have been a red flag because he had came out of prison. But
Okay.
at 18 years old, my mother never sat me down and talked to me about any life skills or
Right.
dating or anything like that. And, we didn't have any, they never taught us anything. It was
Right.
just
Right.
save yourself for marriage, marry your brother, and that's it. There's
That's it. Right.
nothing else.
Right.
And
Now, how
so,
long had been how long was as you were this bridesmaid and you seen this brother, the son of a sister that you already knew, obviously. Um,
yeah, so he
he
wasn't
had just got
baptized at
out.
the time. Yeah. So he
Okay.
wasn't he wasn't baptized yet. He had just came
Okay.
out. The wedding was in January. He came out of prison that December, so the month before.
Okay.
And so she was invited to the wedding and he was there. I think she brought him with him.
All right.
And so, and of course, the girls see the new guy, and he was tall and good looking and, and for him, and he was older than me. I was 18, he was about 23. And
Okay.
so,
Okay.
he said hi to me and I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, a guy's talking to me and, not thinking this guy came out of prison. I'm just excited, a guy's paying attention to me.
Right. Right.
So he chatted with me for like a little bit just to say hi. And I didn't see him again until that summer when we had the large convention. And so I went to the convention and I'm sitting there with my mom and my brother, and I see his sister had come up to me and she's like, hey, do you want to sit with me? And of course, I'm thinking, your brother's probably going to be there. So sure, you know. And so, I go up to sit with her and, I see him, he says hello. And so that was, I think, like a Saturday, because conventions back then was about 3 to 4 days,
Oh
right?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right?
For
Yeah.
sure. If not Thursday, but yeah, for sure. Friday,
Yeah.
Saturday, Sunday, all day long. Yep.
But
Yep.
I think there was a time in the 80s, I think it used to be 4 days, but I think they brought it down to three.
Yeah. Yep.
So he was with his friend, and after the convention, they were like, "Hey, do you want to go hang out with us?" And I'm thinking, older people want to hang out with me, absolutely, And this was the 90s. There was no cell phones. There was nothing to do. I was 18, so where can we go? So
Right.
we did just cruise around. That's what we did back then. We just cruised around, and he was there and it was just nice to just have some guy pay attention to me and he asked me on a date and I'm thinking sure, yeah,
Right.
I'm just a typical 18-year-old getting attention from some guy. And so we went on a date, I believe, the following week, and
Okay.
he picked me up from work and he said we're going to go out and I'm like sure. Um and during this time I never had a curfew. My mother never gave me a curfew because I
Okay.
never really did much.
You didn't
So it
much,
was,
right? Yeah. You never had
yeah,
dated or anything, right?
No, I never did much. I mean,
Right.
and I also have an older sister, and so sometimes I was allowed to tag along, and if she got to stay out late, I got to stay out late, but we never really
Okay.
had a curfew because we weren't doing anything.
Right. 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 Right.
So he picked me up. We went on a date. We went out for lunch. He bought me some lunch. We went out driving, went to a park, and he sat and talked. And he just gave me this whole life story of prison.
Mm.
Um, and I'm just sitting there like curious, like, wow, you were in prison, and talking about prison life. And he said he had done drugs, sold drugs or something to that effect.
And that's
And
why he was
so
in prison.
that's what he told me.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's what he told
Okay.
me. And so um excuse me. So we just, continue to cruise around, sit there and talk, and it was starting to get late. And so, sorry, sorry.
No, don't say sorry. You just take your time.
He, we stopped somewhere, and I remember he was needing to go get gas, right? And
Yeah.
so, as we were driving, we pulled over, and he said, would you like something to drink? And me being 18, I'm thinking a soda. At worst, I thought I was trying to be cool and maybe he bought me a wine cooler. I didn't think nothing of it.
Yeah.
And he had bought a bottle of tequila. And
Mm.
for me, I didn't want to say no. I don't want to be, you know, boring or not cool or, you know. And so he gave me shots of tequila.
Okay.
And I don't remember how many, but sorry. I just remember like parts of it, but somehow like I found myself in the back seat of his car. And I just remember him being on top of me and I was trying to like push him away and I kept saying, I can't. I can't. And I remember, you know, him I remember just trying to push him away and I just kept like in and out. I don't remember much. But I remember that he was just on top of me and I just kept trying to push him away. And I woke up the next morning in his bed. I have no idea how I
Oh,
got there. I
yeah.
don't know anything. I just remember like being in his car and he was giving me tequila shots and then like just very barely bits and pieces of it. And when I woke up in his bed, the first thing that came to my mind was like, I'm not a virgin, like no
Mm.
one's gonna want me now. And I kept thinking like, oh, I'm gonna get in so much trouble, you know? And I wasn't even thinking like what he did to me. I wasn't thinking like, wow, this man violated me. All I'm
Yeah.
thinking about is like Jehovah's gonna punish me. That was my concern, you
Yeah.
know. That
Yeah.
was my concern. And he acted like it was nothing. He just said, oh hey, and I'm thinking, my mind is like racing. My mind is just like, I'm not a virgin. Like, I'm thinking to myself, like, you have to, now we got to be together. I'm thinking, like, you
Right.
can't not be with me because who's going to want me?
Yeah.
Because the organization, the policy tell you, save yourself for marriage. You can only be with one person. That was it, you know? And so realizing this, I'm thinking, like, no brother's going to want to marry me. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And so, he just was very calm and I was just in hysterics and he goes, "We should probably take you home." And I'm like, "Okay." And back then there's no cell phones. There was just, we just had a pager. And
Yeah.
so the next day was Sunday and I had to go to the meeting. And I go home and my mother was like, "Where have you been?" And I said, "Oh, I went to a friend's house." And I'm telling you, having to sit through that meeting on Sunday, I was just waiting that, like, I thought everyone was gonna know, and I just felt like Joe was gonna come down and like punish me, because I just committed like the worst sin, and I just felt like, I'm gonna be someone's gonna find out. My mother, I was so sitting through that meeting was so uncomfortable, and I just sat there and I'm thinking like I just betrayed, Jehovah and dishonored him and just thinking all these things that I've done, you know. And so that week, he I just felt like I would just go to these different moods. Like I have to go and talk to the elders, and just do it. But then I was a coward. I knew what my mother went through. I knew what my brother went through, and I wasn't strong enough to be shunned like that, And I was only 18. I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yes, in terms, 18, you're an adult, but like I was 18, I was a
Not
kid.
mentally. Yeah.
Not mentally,
Yeah.
and I didn't know, I just knew like if I get this fellowship, this is it. And I didn't have the courage to do what all these other people and sit through these meetings in the back and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. But then I would have these moments of like, you have to do it, because again, you don't want to get destroyed. What I mean? It's embedded in us that you don't want to get destroyed. So that whole week was just filled with just, confusion. What am I going to do? And I finally um, reached out to him and I said, I'm going to talk to the elders. I just decided, like, okay, rip the band aid, get it done. I had that bit of moment. I'm like, I'm going to do it. And he somehow convinced me not to.
Oh, of
Right.
course. Of course.
And
Yeah.
so he just says, don't say nothing. We're going to be together, we're going to get married, and, things are going to be fine. And I'm thinking, like, you don't understand, like, what's going on. I'm not even thinking of what he did to me. I'm
Yeah.
more concerned with this organization, the punishment from them, you know. And he's just super calm, not a big deal. And so he convinced me not to say nothing, right? And we continued with the relationship. Um, and I know one of his friends knew that we were committing fornication because at one point, um, I had an apartment and his friend had come over and they all spent the night. And me and him were in the bedroom. So he knew, but it's weird because no one said anything. You know what I
Nobody
mean?
said nothing. Yeah.
No one
Yeah.
said anything. So and soon after we were in this relationship, I felt like, okay, we're gonna get married. We're on that path. You know what I mean? I just felt like this anxiety and pressure of thinking like, I can't be with no one else now. Like you took away my virginity. Now we gotta be together, you know?
So
And so
I'm sorry, so you never said nothing to your mom. You never said nothing to like, obviously you didn't say nothing to the police or nothing, but like, you didn't say nothing to any friends or family or nothing like that.
no one,
Oh,
within once I knew that he said that, okay, we're gonna be together, I felt like, okay,
yeah.
what I mean? Like at least it's not, I felt like, okay, he did this, but we're gonna be together in my own childish mind. And so I do remember telling another sister who was a friend of mine that I was
Yeah.
dating him, you know, and so
That you was what?
that I was dating him.
Oh, okay.
you know.
Okay.
And so I hadn't shared even with no one that I was going on a date with him. No one knew anything. And so I told his sister that I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm going out with him. And she goes and tells my mom and tells everyone. And I had to kind of smooth things over and convince my mom, like, he's a really nice guy. And his mom and all this story. And she ended up liking him, but she still, I'm not gonna, didn't tell her anything. And so he ended up getting baptized. And so he had this idea in his head, well, now that I'm baptized, we can't have sex, we can't do it anymore, right? And so I'm
Hmm?
like, that's fine. Yeah. He thought that because he was baptized, we can't do it anymore. So I said, okay, no problem. And I will say during our early relationship, within 2 months of dating, He made me close down my bank account, and he began controlling my finances.
Oh boy. Yeah.
So I
Mm.
was 18, and 2 months in, he says, close your bank account and just give me the check. And I'm thinking, okay. And so he controlled my finances. He went and got himself an apartment. I, in the meantime, was live with my mom, and so he would give me an allowance. And at that time, I didn't have a license. I didn't have a car, obviously. And so he would give me $10 for the week for bus fare, right? At that time, it was $1 and $1 coming back. So it was $2 a day. So it was $10 a week. And
Bus fare
then
to come see him or to go to work?
to go to work.
Oh
So
wow.
he would give me enough bus fare just for the week.
Oh wow.
And if there was a day during the week that he would pick me up or take me, the following week he would give me $8 because
Oh,
I should have saved those $2. So, and again, I'm thinking, okay, it didn't make sense, but I'm just thinking like this is just the way it's going to be. And so he was very, very controlling in that sense. And so he just controlled my finances, controlled everything.
yeah.
And so I remember one time we were out with some people, and one of the girls said, he's really controlling. I said, no. And I was naive,
Yeah.
and so we ended up getting
Also, somebody else noticed it too, huh?
somebody, but I just thought, you don't know. And I was such a
Yeah.
naive kid.
Yeah.
And so we got engaged early 95. And
Mm.
so they said, oh, when do you want to, and I'm thinking to myself, we got to get married ASAP because this thing, I wanted to be married just so that I can, you know, I don't know, feel okay about myself. And so we ended up getting married that August. So we got married a year, almost to the date of us meeting. And, I would say with probably the first year, it was okay. He was still controlling.
Yeah.
He could be a bit verbally abusive or abrasive, but he was just very controlling, and so, I wouldn't say we were strong in the faith. We would go to the meetings, do what we had to do. Um, but around, I would say, it carried on until about maybe, I would say like 97. 97 is when it was like a light switch, and he just flipped. And
Mm.
I don't know what happened. I don't know what caused it. I don't know, because we're literally fine, one day. And it was just verbally, but then 97 is when he hit me. And
Mm.
so it just was gradual, right? He would just slap me, or he would just push me, or if I did anything wrong, if there was a spoon or a fork in his sink, if the tassels on the rug was not straight, if the bathroom wasn't clean right, you know, and if anything, the house had to be sparkling clean. And, at this time, I would continue giving him my money. If I needed any necessities, I had to write a list, and he would approve or deny. And I didn't have the keys to my house. So if I go to work and I come home, I would have to sit outside and wait and until he decided to come home. And so I didn't have an ID. I didn't have my social, nothing. He had everything in the safe
Oh
because he
man.
said I was nobody. So that anything were to ever happen to me, nobody would care. And so, you know, I just thought this was my life. And I thought this was my
Yeah.
punishment. I made my bed and I gotta lie in it. And I just thought, you can't complain, you can't do nothing. You disobeyed Jehovah. This is your punishment, and this is going to be your life, you know? And he was just, it was just, the beatings just increased, got worse and worse. And so I remember like everything would just set him off, you know what I mean?
Mm.
And if he would punish me in ways that anything that made him upset, You know what I mean? He would punish me. He would make me lay on the floor and spread my arms and legs out. And he said, if you move, I'm going to stomp your head. And I would just sit there because I'm thinking, if you hit me a certain way, he's bigger than me. And so, he would drag me around the house and he would punch me and, he would violate me. And so I just, I just thought that was my life. And I just felt like, how long is this going to go on? And I remember asking him, like, I'm your wife, you know? And he just wouldn't care. And if we were driving, if I did anything to upset him, there was one time he kicked me out of the moving vehicle on the freeway, and I had to walk down the overpass. And he would, if we were ever driving, I would always make it a habit to look to the side because if he would hit me, he wouldn't hit my face, but he would hit the back of my head instead. You know, he would make me sleep in the garage if I disobeyed him. He would make me sleep in the balcony, and we had like a little metal bistro set. And so if I did anything to disobey him, he would make me sleep out there in the cold. And one time, um, there was Hollywood Video. I don't know if you guys had that back there. Like during the 90s, we had the video store.
Oh, for sure.
And
Yeah.
s-
Uh,
and
Blockbuster or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was like a Blockbuster. And so I forgot to remind him to return a video. And
Mm,
mind you, the drive to the video store was about maybe 10 minutes, if that, down the street, down the
yeah.
road. And so because I did not remind him in a timely manner, he made me in the dark at night, in the pouring rain, walk down there to return the video when he had the car.
Oh man, Steph. I'm so sorry to hear that. Man, I'm so bad.
And I remember just walking. I'm
Oh,
like, it would take 5 to 10 minutes for you to do this in a car. Like, why are you gonna make me walk? And I would just cry. And it took me like 2 hours round trip. And then he decided and he began to cheat on me openly. You know, woman would call the house, woman would come over. He would give me his pager and said he would page me when I can come home. And woman would come over,
so wait, you didn't have a car, right? You had to walk
walk. I had to
anywhere
walk.
you had to go. You just had to walk somewhere and leave. You had to leave your home while he cheated and bring
Yeah,
women over.
yeah.
Oh man. And all this
And
time, nobody, like your mom, nobody, you never told anybody what was going on.
that was my punishment. I felt like
You felt
who
like
am
you
I?
were being punished because of what happened before. Oh
Yeah.
man, I'm so sorry, man.
And so, you know, I
Mm.
would when he was ready, when he was done, he would page me and I would walk back home and he would be gone and I would see the mess in a bed and I would have to go back and lay in that bed at night.
Oh,
And so around this time, a unit below us became vacant and a brother that I grew up with moved into that unit with his wife. And all I kept thinking about was he's gonna hear everything. He's gonna hear everything. And I'm just like mortified that someone's gonna find out of what's going on. And so
was he at the same hall? Now, were you guys going to the hall during all this, or not
on and
really?
off, on and off. He would go and then not go, and then we just
Okay.
stopped kind of going. But
And and this brother, he went to the same hall?
I believe he did, but he and I
Okay.
grew up with each other in the 80s.
Oh, okay, okay.
And the side note on this one, his father was the one that walked me down the aisle when I got married.
R- His father walked you down the aisle
Yeah,
with this guy.
yeah,
Oh, wow. Okay,
yeah.
okay.
So in one Friday night, he again had a party. He had some girl that he was dating or whatever. And
Mm,
so at
mm.
this time I was working, and I came home and I just wanted to go home and go to sleep. And so I'm knocking on the door. He's not answering. I can hear everybody having a good time. He's not answering. And so I'm sitting there banging on the door because I have nowhere to go. I have no money. I have no car, no one to call. And so I guess one of the neighbors heard and called the cops. And so the cops comes in and he opens the door and they're saying, can she come in? And he's like, no. And the cop looks at me and goes, do you have anywhere to go? And I'm like, where am I going to go? This is my home, my
Right,
home,
right.
And so during this time, the brother below us heard the commotion and he comes upstairs and he goes, just come downstairs and go to sleep. He
Mm,
never said anything, he never inquired. He was so kind and respectful. I do appreciate that.
yeah,
And I went downstairs. He gave me a pillow and a blanket. He says, just go to sleep. And I remember just sitting there and I was looking at them and I said, and I thought, why can't I be with someone like that? Just peaceful. Just go to bed,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know? And the next morning, it was like nothing happened. And, I go to work and it was just nothing. And so this just escalated and the beatings just got worse. And, didn't care about who he hit me in front of. And at one point, we had gone out with his brother and my husband ex-husband had walked away for a minute to go to the bathroom, and I remember his brother asking me, he goes, is he hitting you? And
really.
I wanted to tell him so bad, but I just felt like I couldn't you know and
His
so
brother knew. He knew, huh?
yeah.
Yeah,
And there
yeah.
was a time prior to that where he had given me a black eye. And I try to cover up with makeup. And I went to work. I had to go to work. And one of the guys said, did he hit you? And I said, no, we were playing and a baseball hit me. And he looked at me and he goes, if he ever hits you again, I want you to tell me. And I said, no, he's not hitting me. Well, I ended up going to his mother's house because, I went to his sister had a baby and I went to go see the baby, and the mother looked at me kind of like you could see the black eye. No makeup was
Yeah,
going to cover that.
right, right.
And so and I remember she took a picture of me and the baby, and on that picture you can clearly see it was a black eye.
Yeah, yeah.
And nothing was said. And so it just continued until one time I he comes home and he was in the shower and I decided to go through his wallet, because I just felt like, these girls are calling, these girls are coming over, when is this going to stop? And so
Man, this dude is bold. Yeah, yeah.
I thought, let me just see who these girls are, maybe I can find a number. And so behind his wallet, behind his credit card, he had like a little piece of paper with all these girls' numbers.
Mm.
And so seeing that just made me more emotional because that's my husband, you know? And so by this time, I'm crying hysterically. He comes out and he asks me why I'm crying. I showed him the paper and I said, why are you doing this? Well, I'm your wife. And so I'm just crying hysterically, and he gets upset with me. And so
All right. It's all right.
grabs a t-shirt and he rips it and he puts a piece of it over my mouth so that I wouldn't stop being hysterical. And I couldn't understand what was going on. I couldn't understand. And so I'm trying to take it out, and he grabs me and he ties my hands behind my back. He throws me in bed, and then he ties my feet together. And then he ties my hands to my feet. So he hog tied me. And he just beat me. I could think about, like, if something happens and he unalives you, like, this is how my mom's gonna find out, you know? And so he left me there and he went to bed. And I'm sitting there hog-tied, couldn't get out, you know? And I, you know, with a t-shirt, enough moisture, it kind of loosens up a little bit, you know. And I was trying to get out of it, and I don't know if I just moved a little bit or made a little bit of noise, but he got mad and he went over there and he flung over me and he hit me. And so I knew how to be quiet. And it took me what seemed forever to finally undo the knots. And the next day I went to work and it was just like nothing. He didn't say nothing, you know? And I knew that if I continue this,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and I just felt like I couldn't understand, like, how much more, you know, was I going to be punished for this, you know? And so in 98, in October, I decided that I have to go. If I continue this, the beatings are getting worse. He doesn't seem to care, you know? And so I felt like if I don't, it's going to take one blow for him to unalive me, you know? I can't. And so at this time, I was working two jobs, which he took both my checks. And
Mm.
the idea of me getting that second job was so I can have a little bit of money, right? And so I was working, you know, late at night. And so took that. And so the night before I was going to leave him, we were paid for my second job. And I gave it to my friend. I said, I'm going to need this money to run away. Right. And so I had already told my first job that I was going to be off that day. Right. So I had it all planned out because, and the reason why I had to do it this way is because I didn't have the key to my house, so we couldn't just go to work and we come back. I had to
Yeah.
wait for him to leave. And so I had it all planned out. I already took the time off from work. My friend had my check. The next morning, he's wondering why I haven't left for work yet. And I said, oh, my boss says I can come in later. And he said, really? So he called my work.
No.
And
It's
he
all right.
told him I wasn't there. And he just lost it. And so he chased me around the house and he was beating me along the way. He kept asking for the check. And I lied and I said my mom had it. I said my mom had it. And he says, get the check. And so I call my mom. My mother has no idea what's going on. And
No.
no idea. And so as I hear her going up the stairs, he opens the door and I bolted out of there so fast. In my pajamas, in my slippers, I ran, did not stop until I got out of that building, out of that street, into the first payphone down the street, and I called 911. And I was
Okay.
just hysterically screaming he was going to unalive me. And my mother comes and follows, has no idea what's going on, you know? And so I guess I should have noted that he had told me during when we were dating that he was on his second strike. So if something happened, that would be her third strike.
Okay.
So he had always warned me that um, never to call the cops on him because that would be his third strike.
Okay.
Right. So um, I realized what I had done. Right. So now I'm freaking out thinking I called the cops.
Yeah.
And so he had gone out to work And so the fire department was there, the police department, because what he would do is whenever he would go away, away for the weekend, which was a lot, he would lock me outside. So I couldn't go outside. He would take the
Lock you in
phones,
the house.
lock me in the house. And he would use like those real estate locks, those big locks.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
he would
yeah.
lock it from the outside so that I couldn't get out.
Mm,
And then
mm,
he would take the phone so I couldn't call out. So the fire department, knew I didn't have the keys, and so they had to go inside through the window. And the whole thing, pictures, they found the safe. Um, and so when I realized what I had done, I got really scared.
yeah.
And so I started to get nervous, and I said, "Oh, I think we're okay." And he goes, "Nope, it's out of my hands now." You know,
Mm,
and so um that's when we finally separated. But then because of the charges, because the laws by then for um DV changed, right?
okay,
So in the past, one was able to, you know, press charges and then I believe retract it, but because certain cases, um, that wasn't able to happen no more. So they can prosecute without needing you anymore,
right.
right?
Okay,
And so that's what they did. And so, we separated, I moved out and began the whole pre-trial, right?
okay.
And so, mind you, no one else, for some reason, I guess gossip, word got out, right, that I was getting divorced. And I remember a sister called me at work, right?
Hmm.
The first thing out of her mouth was, I heard you're getting divorced. Not, are
First
you,
thing.
first thing, not, are you okay? Anything I can do? No, I heard you're getting divorced. And I
Oh,
said, wow. And so I just hung up on her. And I was so angry at everything, at life, at the organization. I was just hated everything and everybody. I just said, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die. I don't care. I just had this rage in me and just this anger.
yeah.
And so I just said, never again. And so when we left, the whole court system, they was doing some pre-trial, and when they realized, I don't know what he was looking at, but it was enough for his lawyer, him to come out to me and basically beg me to lie in court.
Mm,
So they can
mm,
ask for a plea deal, reduction or something. So they asked me to lie in court to help him not go back to prison. And what do? I lie in court
yeah,
with the
yeah,
promise because I was so scared what I had
yeah.
done. And I lied in court, so he got off with not much. And during this time,
Mm,
I was in hysterics because, when you're being asked to lie, right? And he thought I was going to crack. He thought I wasn't going to go through with it. So he wanted me to calm down. And so his way of doing that was giving me drugs, you know?
mm.
So I don't know if I can say that word, the C word.
I mean, oh, oh, he was giving you Coca-Cola.
Yeah, that's what he was
Yeah,
giving me.
yeah.
And so I
Mm.
don't think he understood that
To calm down?
yeah, to calm down. Let's give you Coca-Cola. And so, and so I don't think he thought that I would be addicted to it, but I did.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
that started that whole, journey of addiction and, for
Mm,
5 years until I sobered up in 2003, but not
okay.
without ODing in New Year's 2000. And
Ah,
so I
okay.
just, I always say between 98 and 2003 was just pretty much unaccountable for. I just hated life, but I still, even though I left the organization, it was still in you, right?
You
So every
still
time I
believe
would,
it was the truth, right?
I still believed it was the truth. I just felt
Yeah,
like I had so much anger and I just felt like, well, this is what happens. This is why it's happening to you because you disobeyed Jehovah. And I would go through periods of like, well, I don't care. And then I would be like, nope, you better care. So it was all these mind games, right? This
yeah,
mind control. And so it just carried on until I finally sobered up in 2003. And, our divorce became final, I think a few years after that. It took a long time. And so I, was going to work one day and I see a sister at my work who I've known for a long time. And the first thing she looked at me, she thought she'd seen a ghost. And
Mm,
I said, calm down. I said, I'm not disfellowshipped.
mm.
And she goes, oh, I didn't know. And I said, calm down. So we kind of reestablished somewhat of a friendship. And of course, she tries to convince me to go back to the meeting and things will be great. And I said, well, it's been a long time. And she knew I was in a, situation with my ex, but she didn't know the whole story. And so she invited me to go to a memorial one year. And I go and I sit there. And the sister that has known me since childhood looked at me and looked over to his sister and completely disregarded me. And I just felt, wow, this is how we're treating people, huh? You have
Mm.
no idea what's going on, no idea what's happening, but let's go ahead and completely ignore me. And so I told my friend, I said, you know what? I said, you want me to come back to an organization where they're treating me like this?
So
And she
you
said,
hadn't been disfellowshipped or anything. They just knew you were not active,
yeah,
I
I just
guess.
left.
You just
I
left,
just
right?
I just
You just
left.
wasn't attending. And they knew you were in a rough relationship, but no inquiries into how you were doing or anything like that.
No one knew that he was even really hitting me. Like his family, I
Okay,
felt like they
okay.
kind of knew,
Right.
but the only one that I feel that kind of knew because he was there was the brother that lived below me.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but
Now, did
no
they ever
one.
have confrontation? Because I'm thinking like the way this dude was, he found out you were sleeping down there to go to sleep with someone. He was married too, though, right?
He was married.
He was married, but I'm thinking this guy, the way he acting, like that might have been a big issue too. That that she
Oh,
was
he cared
down there.
about only money. He cared about only money.
I only care about money.
Only,
Yeah.
and the reason why I say that is because, he always made sure I gave him my money. He would review my time cards to make sure I was working 40 hours, right?
Wow.
He
Wow.
would review my time cards. And so he just cared about money. He didn't care about anything else.
Now, was he using drugs at this time? Was he working?
He was working.
And
Yeah.
was he using drugs at the time too? What was he doing with your money? Just partying with it or what? I mean, keeping
Whatever.
it,
Yeah. He buy himself
whatever he
nice
wanted to do.
clothes, whatever. He bought himself a
Oh
new
wow.
car.
Wow.
I wore the same thing. He would buy nice clothes for himself, nice things, and I wore the same thing. I never went
Wow.
really shopping. Every once in a while, if he felt generous, what I
Mm,
mean, he would, and there were very small little pockets of things when he would be nice, what I mean? But once 97 came and the physical abuse started, it was over from there. What I mean?
yeah.
Prior,
Wow.
he would have like little pockets of, niceness and I felt like, okay, things are gonna be okay. But once 97 hit and the abuse started really bad,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
all bad.
So you divorced in 2003. You said around 2003.
I left him in 98, and I think
Oh,
it took a
98.
minute. Yeah, I left him
Okay.
in 98. And so I think it
Okay.
took a minute for the whole divorce to go through.
Okay.
Um, but
Okay.
then I became sober in 2003.
Okay.
And then
Now,
uh-huh.
no, now did you like live with your mom? You moved out, like, or live on your own?
I was living on my own. I was
Okay.
just pretty much, going from renting a room, renting a little
Okay.
studio. So I was
Okay.
on my own
Okay.
by then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Trying to understand life skills. I didn't know anything.
Yeah. 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 You're not taught anything. Yeah. Yeah.
No,
Mm.
no. But even after, when I met with my friend and she tried to convince me to go back to the organization and she goes, you should talk to the elder so and so. And I said, so and so. I said, I've known him since we were kids. I am not telling him everything.
Right. Right.
And she sat with me and gave me a Bible study. She would really try to convince me. And I said, I'm not going to be one of those people that are, in, half out. If I'm going in, I'm going in all the way. Right.
Okay.
I didn't
Yeah.
want to be those hypocrites that are, I don't know what they call them, like PMO or POMO. I don't know what they call them. There's different terms for it now.
You
But
talking about the fake ones? I
yeah,
shouldn't
the
call them
fake
fake,
ones.
but physically in, mentally out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't want to be
Yeah.
that. And I was very
Yeah.
honest with her and I told her and I said, if I'm gonna go back and I said I'm gonna go back the right way.
Okay.
And throughout all of this, I felt like I have to go back.
Yeah.
By this time I'm worldly, I'm dating, I'm doing things, I'm partying, I'm having fun, and I know no one knew I was ever raised as Jehovah's Witness. And
Yeah.
the reason why is because the intent was I have to go back, right?
Mm.
And even though I was faded out, even though I was out, it would always think of around the corner, I'm gonna miss it,
Yeah. The
my mother would.
indoctrination was still there.
Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
go away. People
Yeah.
think, because I know some people that just left and they screw it, it's not for me. I'm living my best life, and
Right.
that's fantastic. But
Right.
for some of us, that induct was really embedded in our head. You know what I mean? And it was always obey or
Yeah.
die, and it stuck with me. And
Yeah.
so when my mother would call me, she goes, come back, come back. We're going to be going through Armageddon, tribulation. And then my
Mm.
sister,
Yeah.
and then, some of my friends as they come back. And I remember when they would call me and I said, if you're going to talk about Armageddon, tribulation, I said, please don't. I said, I can't handle those types of conversations. And so, yeah, I just continued, living my life and just always had questions and just there was a few times when I would think like this can't be the truth. We've been waiting for so long, and
Mm.
then that thing in your head, around the corner, because I would question things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And every time there was like a war, natural disaster, anything, major event that would happen in the world, I would think where it's happening, it's happening. Even COVID, I thought this is it,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so I just lived my entire life in just fear that I have to come back, And
Yeah.
by this time in 2008, I met my now ex. And I just felt that, you know, this is as good as it's gonna get, and I might as well just settle, and
Okay.
so we
Now,
ended up
was this
getting.
the witness,
No,
brother?
no.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
He was not a witness.
Okay.
I just felt that, and I remember telling him, I said, I was raised, and I said, may want to come back, and at this time we were living with each other. My mom would say, well, I'm not going to visit because you're living in sin. And
Mm.
so I just felt like, it was just very conflicting. There were periods when I would just be like, I'm just gonna live my life and be happy. But then it was just like that little thing in your head, you
Yeah.
know. And every
Yeah.
time, you would hear it and you would think like, I have to go back. I have to go back. And, in the world of, social media and search engines, I never ever looked up JWs.
Yeah.
Never.
Most of us don't.
Because
Mm-mm.
because when we were growing up, we didn't have this, first of all, right?
Right. Right.
So
Right.
when they talked about apostates, my idea of an apostate was somebody that was dragging their Bible and saying, "You're Jehovah's Witnesses are horrible people." That's what I thought an apostate was, you know?
Yeah. It's crazy. People that's just like they're like the family. They're related. They're like the daughter or the son of the devil. The
Yeah, you
apostates,
know,
you know. Yeah.
because we didn't have nothing. We took them
Right.
for what they said.
Yeah.
They always said, "Don't believe those people that dishonor Jehovah's organization." You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah.
that's what we were told, and so
Can't even talk. Don't even talk to them. Don't even
no,
entertain 'em. Yeah.
no, because an apostate was the worst. They were worse than disfellowshipped.
Oh, for sure. Apostate was like,
That
man,
was
that was the worst position you could be in. Like, there's no hope for you, buddy. There's no
no.
paradise for you, no resurrection. There's nothing for you. Yeah.
Nothing. Like you are the worst of the worst.
For
And
sure.
I remember even telling my friend because, that when people would, when I went to a funeral for a friend's family member and there were JWs there, some of them kind of looked at me like, why is she here? Why is she, you know what I mean? And so
Mm.
I was there to pay my respect, but I also felt like, I told my friend, I said, it's one thing if I'm out there saying, I want nothing to do with this, then fine, don't talk to me. I said, but you don't know my life story. You
Right.
know what I mean? And I remember saying, if I come back, I'm gonna make them people know how they made me, you know what I mean? Like, because
Right.
I knew what it was like to be shunned. My mom was shunned, my brother was shunned. You know
Right.
what I mean? And I never liked that policy. I never
Yeah.
liked it because
Yeah.
I always felt it did more wrong than good. And I didn't
Yeah.
understand the process behind it or what the objective was. It made no sense to me, you know?
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, I just continued, doing that in my second ex and I, and unfortunately that relationship did not make it. And so when I
No, he
finally,
wasn't like the first guy, was he?
oh, he was the complete opposite, which is why I decided to
Oh,
just settle. He was complete opposite.
okay,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, I
okay,
had been, by the time I left my first ex in 98, I remained single until 2008.
okay, okay.
Yeah, I just, and it wasn't because I didn't want to be with anyone. It wasn't that I didn't want to be in love or anything, but, and a lot of my friends at that time, I would have this persona of just like, I don't need no man. I can, you know what I mean? But inside, I felt that I would still be punished by Jehovah. That I felt
Yeah,
like my punishment was, until I go back and confess, I will always be, I will never be happy. I will never be
yeah.
blessed. And so I just felt that until I go back, until I confess everything, will I be blessed, you know? So I just felt
Mm,
that my life was just filled with just being content, not happy, you know? And so I was single for 10 years, I would date. But it just, and I remember my friend saying, he goes, don't you want to, and I just wanted to say I do, but I can't explain something to them when I would have to
right.
go back into my
Yeah,
beliefs, you know?
right, right. You didn't want to, yeah,
No, and I never told anyone that I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness. Never, because because the lifestyle that I was living, going out, partying with my friends, and, I always felt that if I'm going to come back, I don't want them to know that, you know, you were raised and you're doing this. I didn't want to dishonor the organization.
that's right. That's right. You don't want to bring reproach on the, yeah, on the
Yeah,
organization. Yeah, that's, yeah, yeah,
like that is crazy to me that that's how much control they have over us. That we're still worried about what others are going to think of this organization. Who
yeah,
cares about what we think, or how
yeah,
we're feeling? Who
yeah,
cares?
for
You know what I
sure.
mean? But
Yeah,
it's just making sure, like, bring honor to the organization, because they paint this picture of, that we're a clean organization, that we're pure and we're loving. And I'm like, well, that don't make no sense at all. It's the opposite, you know?
yeah, yeah. That's
So
sad too, the
it
control they
is.
have over you like that. All the things you went through, and all you're thinking about is, am I in trouble with Jehovah?
Yeah.
Am I in
Am
trouble
I gonna
with
make
God?
it?
Like, am I gonna make it in the paradise? Armageddon coming, am I gonna make it? Oh man, okay, okay. So
And that's
did you ever come back? Did you ever go back to the hall?
I remember I would, by this time, the rules were changing, the new light, as I like to call
Okay,
it, the new
yeah,
light. And so, when I got divorced with my second ex in 2016,
okay,
um, I
okay,
decided, I'm going to take some time off. I'm going to figure out my life. And so, I went through, a few things. And so I just knew I had to come back. But the question was, how was I going to come back? Right. And I remember telling one of my friends, because there was only two people that I would talk to from the organization.
okay,
Um, and I was very honest with her, and I said, I'm, if I'm committing fornication, I can't come back. You know what I
right,
mean? So I
right,
said, I'm not gonna lie. And she goes, well, and I said, just we need to change the subject. And I said, but when I'm
mm,
ready, I said, if I'm gonna do it right, I'm gonna do it right. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, this is the truth, right?
yeah,
This is the truth. And I think the last memorial that I went to, I think it was like last year in 2024. And so I remember
okay,
in 2024, I turned 49 in December, last December.
okay.
And so, of course, we're gonna turn the big 50. So it's the whole, what are you gonna do? You're gonna make it big, big party, you're gonna do, and I'm thinking, yeah. And then I'm thinking, once again, am I gonna make it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because, when you're so indoctrinated, when it's so embedded, even though it's been over 20 years that I faded out, it was still affecting everything I did.
yeah,
Everything. You know what I mean? I couldn't concentrate. I would always think, my friends would talk to me like, yeah, we should plan a trip for the summer. And I'm thinking, are we gonna make it? You know what I mean?
Wow.
Even work. You know, my boss would talk to me and she goes, oh, we should do these things. And I'm like, the world's gonna end. My mind was so thinking around the corner because they tell you that. They've been telling us since around the corner, and you're literally, it feels like you're at the edge of your chair thinking, when is it gonna happen?
Oh
You know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah, yeah. I talked to one guy who said it's like the long Jerron, he says like the longest corner in the world. Around the corner, this is like the longest corner somebody ever turned. You know what I mean? Like this corner is taking a long time to turn.
Oh my God. Can I just say how much I love that interview? You too. Oh my God. That interview
Oh
was,
yeah, thank you. Yeah, yeah.
man.
His
But
yeah, it's raw. His story is raw too. But
yeah.
yeah.
But that's what exactly what he said, the longest around the corner, longest corner.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Yeah.
We're just you're waiting and you're waiting and it's just like it and it's almost like you want to leave but you don't want to leave and and finally I'm just thinking, man, like when. And I remember being told, we got to have faith, you got to have faith in Jehovah. He never lets us down. It's going to happen. We're in the days. And I'm like,
Mhm.
but we've been
Mhm.
hearing end of days since I was a kid, and I'm going to
Yeah.
be 50. That's 45 years of
Right.
1914,
Right.
you
Right.
know? And so when I realized I was going to be 50 this year, I just had questions and I just felt like, am I going to make it to 50? And I was at that crossroads of like, where am I going to go? What am I going to do?
Mm.
Am I going to go back to the organization?
Yeah.
And one day I was on Instagram watching a reel and I see this video of this girl in the car. And I'm like nosy as ever, thinking, well, I want to see what she has to say. And I clicked on her video and I all I heard was the word JW and court. I said, woo, apostate. I clicked
Yeah.
I clicked out
Yeah.
so fast. And I was like, just you know what I mean? Because even throughout all of this, like whenever I would hear people saying anything negative about JW, I'm like, oh, I used to be no, that's those these are the people that they warned us about. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because I remember in the 80s, I don't know if you remember when they would say they're going to persecute us, they're gonna take everything from us. And so,
Oh
you know,
yeah.
I remember, and this, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. I remember, like, I think during COVID, like I was stocking up because I thought the world was coming, the Armageddon's coming. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember at work and I was stressed out. My boss was like, what's wrong? I'm like, I need Clorox wipes. Like, I'm thinking like the Armageddon's coming. And and I'm thinking, I don't care about food. I need to make sure I have soap and water and Clorox wipes,
Right. Right. Sorry. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I really thought this was it. I
Yeah.
really
No,
thought
for real.
Armageddon was coming.
No, yeah, I feel you 100%. Like any world is I remember I know you remember 9/11.
I thought that too.
Thought that was
9/11.
Armageddon. I really was like, oh,
Yeah.
this is the start of the Great Tribulation.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Exactly what I thought. And I'm thinking, oh, it's happening. And I'm like, I'm not even prepared. And mind you, in 2001, I was still a hot mess. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
that's right. You're in the yeah.
I
I'm thinking
wasn't,
now
I was,
timeline wise. Yeah. Yep.
I
Yep.
was, I was not good. And I remember thinking like, oh man, it's coming. I'm not even, and I remember, when was it? I think it was Katrina too. I think that was 2005, I think.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
any natural disaster, any war, I remember
Yeah.
thinking like, this is the end, right?
Bible prophecy being
Like,
fulfilled.
yep. And I would hear people saying, and my mom like, it's happening. And I said, oh gosh, And
Yeah.
even as late as last year, when the whole administrations of the peace between these countries, and I'm like, oh my God, it's
Hmm.
happening. So when I clicked on that girl's video, I said, oh no, it's an apostate. Out. Yeah, I was like, nope, not gonna listen to her. But then I
Right, right.
thought, she doesn't look like a typical apostate. She seemed very nice and she wasn't screaming or anything.
Hmm.
And every time I would be on my Instagram feed, she was there on my feed. I was like, dang it, how did she get in there?
Right,
Apostate
right.
material. And the funny thing is on Instagram, when you're doing when you're searching, it's mostly pops up things that you would search for. So I couldn't understand like how she appeared on my feed when I never looked up JW.
Mm,
So that was, yeah. So I just thought it was a little weird because I'm like, I
yeah,
never searched JW ever, you
yeah.
know? And I'm one that loves documentaries, and I've looked up, Mormons, I looked at Catholic, I looked up everything, but I never searched JW because I felt like doing that would mean you're questioning your faith, right?
Well, since you looked at other stuff, the algorithm was like, wait a minute, you might be interested in this too, then, because
Yeah.
this is related to that.
Yeah. No idea how, but
Mm.
um I finally, when I saw her video, I'm thinking, darn it, I'm just gonna see. I'm just gonna see what this grass is saying. It's apostate. And so it was a video of things that she liked about the organization. It was,
Hmm.
she was talking about the conventions and us girls getting new outfits to talk to the boys, and the hoagies and the danishes, and I was
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah.
remember the hoagies?
Oh yeah, yeah. And the
Those,
Danishes and the apple Danish and cheese Danish, or
yeah.
yeah, the puddings. Yeah, the puddings. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, do you
yeah.
remember in the 80s back then when they gave us a little book and you had to rip out the little ticket? It was like,
Oh, oh wow, you took me back on that. Yes, the tickets to get in line to get the food, right?
yes.
You're like, yeah, yeah. Oh wow, yeah, I remember that
It,
now.
they
Yep,
look like
they
they
took
look
me back
like
on that
miniature food stamps.
one. Yeah, yeah. Look, a lot of witnesses probably were used to that because the average witness
We were
probably
poor.
was not doing good financially. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow, you
I
took me
mean,
back with that. Yeah.
I remember the little, small little the little things, and that's true what you said about the for people for the JWs that they financially they were not good. My
Mm-mm. No.
mom struggled. And I
Yeah.
remember being 15 years old and I told my mom, like, I'm hungry. We had
Mm,
no food. And she goes,
mm,
Jehovah will provide. And I said, well, Jehovah ain't gonna give you some money, and she would rather be at service, right? And I
mm.
remember being at service and I said, Mom, we have to get money or food. And she goes, Jehovah will provide. And she was just knocking on the door, very zealous. And I'm like, she goes,
Yeah.
Jehovah will always provide. And I said, well, the Bible always says if you don't work, you don't eat, you know?
Right. Right. Right.
So that was our, it's so true. And it's unfortunate that,
Yeah.
but yet they expect you to donate, right?
I, oh my good.
They
Yes. Now
expect you to donate.
that
They
right
don't have
there is the
money.
oh man. That is
But
the biggest to me. That the irony of that is like, don't pursue higher education. Don't be trying to get material things. Don't be materialistic. Don't be worrying about money. Jehovah's gonna provide. What they say, seek the kingdom first, and all these other things be added to you. But on the other side, you're struggling, but Jehovah gonna take care of you. But make sure you get them donations. It's like, man, it's like I'm broke. You trying to make sure you keep me broke, you know?
yeah. And I don't know if
Uh,
you remember, but in the Kingdom Hall, when they would announce the finances, is always like, we only have 500 left. And I'm like, dang, every month we got 500.
I remember
Like
every
every month it
assembly
was we
too.
were
They would read it. There was a deficit. The
yeah,
assemblies was always. It was never a surplus. It was
yeah,
always. So at this time, after he read off these numbers, at this time we have a deficit of 1,300. What I don't know, whatever the number would be, but it's like, huh? It's always a deficit.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. And the funny thing is when you see these governing bodies, they sure have nice suits.
Oh, what?
Nice suits and watches. Must be
What?
nice.
Oh yeah, Taylor.
Yeah,
Taylor.
must be
Taylor.
nice.
Yeah, they living in luxury. Living in
Yeah.
luxury.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and and yeah, when I've seen those videos on YouTube now, and I see the governing body, I'm like, wow, you guys are really well dressed. But people that are struggling financially,
Yeah.
you're not doing anything for them, right?
No, witnesses have no kind of program set up to help their members if they fall on hard times, if they get their lights cut off. Now, members can help each other out, but they don't really have anything set up to help people that believe in them, that trust them. They have nothing set up while they're worth
Yeah,
billions of dollars, but they don't
yeah,
have anything to help their members, let alone not even the community. Like no help from
nothing.
no. We just here to preach. We're here to give you the solution. God's
Yeah,
kingdom. That's the solution.
but we'll give you our money, whatever we have left.
But make sure you donate.
Make sure you donate.
Oh man.
They even got the barcode there now.
Oh yeah,
Got the
QR
bar-
code. We're gonna make sure now. There's no excuse. There's no
No
excuse. You can set
excuse.
up monthly. You can set up monthly recurring. It's
Oh my
very
goodness.
convenient. Very convenient. So
So
back to your story. So you hearing all this new light and stuff, and So you said around 2024. What'd you say about 2024? December?
So I turned 49 in December
Turn
last year.
49. That's right. Yep.
Yeah. And
Yep.
so it wasn't until this year, this February, she popped up in my feed. And so when I saw the hoagie
That's right.
video,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's right.
I said, oh, that was nice. And so I said, let me send her a message. And I said, oh God, if I correspond with an apostate, that is the demon. I thought like the demon was gonna come and and so, but I just felt like that was nice that she did that. You know what I mean? I
Mhm.
liked that video. So it took
Yeah,
me
yeah.
about a week to hit send. And
Wow.
she reached out and she was very nice. She wasn't like, do this and do she was like, answered my question because I had some questions, but she also said, do the research, search them.
Mhm. Yeah,
And when she
yeah.
told me that, I felt like I gave myself permission to finally Google JW, right? And Tim, let me tell you, when I Googled JW, I nearly fell off my chair.
Yeah.
I, since as long as I was a kid, my entire life, I thought Jesus was a JW. I thought JW went back to the days of Moses, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's what I believed in, right? And
Yeah.
so when I'm sitting there, I spent days until like 2, 3, 4 in the morning going down this rabbit hole of
Oh man.
information.
Yeah.
And when
Yeah.
I found out that it was a man-made doomsday cult from the 1800s, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't even a religion, it was a publication company. It was Charles Taze Russell, right?
There you go.
Just a publication company, right?
Yeah.
And he changed the Bible, he changed it to what his narrative wanted to be. And then he predicted, I think it was like 1919, right? Like, woo, the whole everything. I think it was 1915 or 1919. I think was
Who,
it
Russell?
Russell was 1915, right? Or 19,
Russell predicted first he predicted that 1879 something,
yes.
but anyway, 1914 would end with Jesus coming back, Armageddon and all that stuff. 1914 was the big year they was supposed to happen.
Yeah. And so I remember seeing that and I'm thinking, what the heck? And I was
Yeah.
like, and then I read the second guy, I think it was Rutherford,
Judge
and
Rutherford. Yep.
he was the one that said 100 million alive now will never die. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah.
1925.
That's right.
And I
That's right.
remember reading about it and him saying, he goes, people were, selling their businesses, their homes, their livelihood. And then
Yeah.
1925 came and went,
Yeah.
right? And I don't know if many people know this, but like I think they bought a mansion. I think it was in SoCal. I think it was
Yeah.
Bethlehem or something.
Beth Rahim, something like that, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
Judge Rutherford had it built before 1925. He was so sure in 1925 that Abraham, Moses, all the forefathers are all going to be resurrected, and so that would
Hmm.
be a house for them to live in.
How nice. Yeah.
And then when
Mansion.
they did come back, guess who moved in?
He, he did.
I guess I'll take it.
I'll take it. No one's and I remember seeing his little picture in a Cadillac and I was like, sure must be nice. You
Yeah.
know?
Oh yeah. Yep.
And I'm like,
Yep.
and around that time it was like, wasn't it the big recession or something? Or I'm like, man. And
Yeah.
so when he died, the society quietly sold that mansion, right? And I
Yeah.
think it was and I think Rutherford was the one that changed the name. I think it was in 1931. He changed it
That's
from the
right.
Watchtower to,
Mhm.
Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
And I
The
think,
International Bible Students Association.
yeah, something
Yeah.
like he did
Yep.
that. And so Rutherford came along and goes, nope, I'm changing everything. I'm changing the rules. I'm changing everything.
That's
And I
right.
think he did a shunning. I think he did the shunning, but he changed everything, and this
Yeah.
whole
Shave the
19,
beards.
yeah, everything.
Yeah.
Because I think when it was Charles Taylor, I think they were allowed to celebrate Christmas. I think,
Yeah. With Russell, they could do Christmas. They were smoking. They had
yeah,
beards, all that stuff. And Rutherford basically, when Russell died, people were following Russell so hard that Rutherford didn't like that. So Rutherford made so many changes to get people to stop being Russellites or stop following Russell and to follow him, basically. You know what I mean? It was a lot of
yeah,
divisions back then. And some of these groups broke off. I forgot the names of them, but some of them are still around today, small groups that broke off from back then.
really. Oh
Yeah,
my.
yeah. There's a few of them. I
Mhm.
forgot the names of them, but they're on jwfacts.com. I love that. I love that website.
Yeah, but I remember after the Rutherford, and I think there was another president before they decided to have a governing body, right?
Yeah,
And
yep.
so the more I kept going down this rabbit hole, the more I kept, and then I got into YouTube watching the documentaries and then the stories of
Oh,
other people. And then what really made me upset was these CSA cases that they've been hiding for decades, decades. Okay. And I'm like, that not okay. Because, and when I remember when I was starting to say, like, I'm done, I questioned one of my friends. She goes, well, it's this one. And I said, there is something to be said, if it's like an isolated case. I said, but we're talking decades of
decades
cases
and thousands of
and
cases.
thousands of people. And I said, and there's something to be said when all of us, right? Because something that I appreciated, like since I've been woke up, right, and going down this rabbit hole is that, a lot of our communities for these XJWs, we all share something in common,
Yeah,
right? Even though our journey, our paths are going in different directions, but we all share something. And so there's something to be said when all of our stories align.
yeah,
I mean,
for sure. That's
I
right.
thought I was
Yep.
the only one that thought that it was going to get destroyed in any moment.
Yeah,
And one of the first videos that I posted on Instagram was that video of that Leah Remini did. And so
yep,
that video
yep,
and that episode like was like, are you serious? People are unaliving themselves and people are losing their families and you
yeah,
know what I mean? Like just, and when I saw the interview that you did, like when you get cut out, you know what I
yeah,
mean? And so I finally realized we were, I was feeling all these emotions. I was feeling angry and upset, and I felt my childhood was robbed. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And
yeah.
so, and trying to understand, like, I'm like, they really just screwed many lives. You know what I mean? Like, we devoted ourselves to them. You know what I mean? And the
Sure.
fact that I, was mentally tormented for decades, thinking like at any given moment it's coming, right? And I post postpone everything in life. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
My whole life was just like, what for? The world's going to come end. It's going to come
that's
to an end.
right.
So when I finally woke up and I said, enough is enough, I'm done, right?
Yeah,
And there's so many people, that come out of this and, don't believe in God, don't believe in Jesus, they become atheists. And I always tell people, like, you know what, that's their journey. You know what I mean? Because I've talked to people where just hearing a scripture triggers them, you know?
hmm. Yep,
And so, I always say like everyone's journey is different. It's always, that's why I love our community so much. And for
yes,
me, I always believed in God, but I didn't believe in that God. You know what I mean? I couldn't understand, you know?
yeah,
And so when I reached out to her name is Amber from
yeah, yep,
Cult Life. And so
yep.
I reached out to her and I said like I remember talking, I'm thinking like, what in the world did we believe in? Right. And she goes,
Hmm.
see, and she gave me that space to say, do your research. And when I reach out to her, I'm thinking, this is a man-made cult. Are you insane? What in the heck? And I was just like, I was on fire. I was like, screw this. And so finally I woke up February 19th of this year.
All
You
right,
know,
all
I woke
right.
up
That's like
and
your new baptism date.
woo, and so and what I did was that I said, I'm gonna just, I'm done. Like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? But so, but also understanding, that even though I know this is a cult, I know that 100% fact, right?
yeah.
Every once in a minute, you get that little, something, right? So it's a lot of undoing. And the way I describe it is it's like a tight knot that you're trying to undo, right?
Mm, mm,
I know it's a cult, you know?
hmm.
And
Yep,
so when I finally woke up and I finally said, okay, I'm gonna let my family and friends know that I don't expect me to come back. I'm not a lost sheep. I'm not coming back. And I remember I called my mom, I called my sister, and I told them, I said, I love you guys. And if you feel the need that you have to shun me, I'm okay. But
yeah,
I'm going to start living my life because I'm
yeah,
so behind. I'm going to be 50 and I'm
yeah,
so behind. I missed out on everything because of this cult, you
Yeah.
know? And so thankfully, I was very fortunate that neither of them, will shun me, right? I've been
Good.
very fortunate for that.
Good.
And I feel with my mom is because she's a lot more empathetic, because
She
she
was
was,
she know what it feels like.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so I reached out to my other two friends and I called and I said, I'm going to post something on Facebook. And I said, I'm letting you know now, letting you guys know now that I'm not coming back. This is a cult. I no, we're done. And so they're
Hmm.
like, we're not going to shun you. We still love you, but please come back. And I said, no, no, no. I go, there is no convincing me. I said, if anything, I said, I want you guys to research this. I'm going to pray for you guys, you
Yeah.
know? So when I finally posted that video on Instagram, when I finally posted that video on Facebook and, a few people dropped, it was basically me saying, now I'm going public, you know?
Okay.
Now I'm
Yeah.
going public.
Yep.
Now I'm what some people may consider an apostate, right? And that's the worst of the worst. But, what I found in replacement of this cult was an amazing support group. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like we all
Yeah.
share something in common.
For
And
sure.
I have found that I've received a lot more support. I've received a lot more people being, uplifting and being supportive of you and very genuine about it,
Yeah.
right? Unlike the
Yep.
brothers and sisters that we grew up with that
Yep.
pretended they were our friends and they're like, well, so and so, you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
and I'm constant. It's only been like 3 months, but I'm still like undoing a lot. I'm realizing, things that have happened that I just suppressed, that I thought, you know, was a gray area, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
and sharing that. And I always thought it was me, you know what I mean? And I still can't believe like I blamed what he did to me on on me, and
Yeah.
I think back now, I'm thinking he violated you, you
Yeah.
know? It's like that was not okay. It was not okay,
Yeah.
and even though I blame myself, right? Because I put myself in that position because, I should have I used to tell myself, you're a baptized sister. You sure have never even gone out on a date with this guy. You know what I mean? I kept saying it was my fault, it was my fault, but at the end of the day, you know what I mean? I said no. I
Mm.
said I try to push you away, and what he was not right, you know?
Yeah.
And so he has since passed away. He passed away in 2009.
Oh, okay. I was gonna
So
ask you about what. Yeah. Okay. All right.
I found out about it through Facebook, and I guess there was a situation and somebody did something and he was unalived. So that was
Oh.
in
Okay.
2009. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so when that
And you had
happened,
got. Let's see. So let me ask you this. I'm sorry. When did
that's
you
okay.
find out? Because you had got what remarried in 2008, right?
I met my second ex in 2008.
And
We didn't
so,
get married until 2013, but I was
okay,
already with someone in
you already with
2009.
somebody, right? When that happened,
Yeah.
right? Right. Okay. Okay. And when did you find out?
In 2009, somebody
Oh, you
had
found out in
posted.
2009 when it happened.
Yeah, somebody had
Okay.
posted
Okay.
RIP on Facebook, and I was like, that's
Right.
weird. And
Hmm.
so that's when I found out, and and people were saying, all these bad things. And I said, you know what? I said, I will be honest, I felt relief, because it
Okay.
was always in the back of my mind, not that he would do or I would allow that to happen, but just be in that same area and just I always felt uneasy about it, you know.
Like he might
Um
pop up or something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
not that I would, allow that, but just it just didn't feel right,
Yeah.
and even back then, even after, it wasn't until this year that I realized that what he did was wrong. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah.
Because when you blame yourself and then, you go
Mm.
and marry that person because you feel like you owe it to this organization that you have to honor, it was just it's
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
no,
Well,
no.
good for you. And I'm sure that did bring about some relief. Not that you not saying happy or anything like that, but just like that's done. That's
Yeah.
definitely done now, you know. Oh wow. Wow.
Yeah. It was a lot, but what I say now, and I just feel like even though I'm 49 now, I feel that there's so much I want to do. You know what I mean? And now,
Yeah.
because a lot of people, like I said, our journeys are different, right? I've always believed in God. I just didn't believe in this one. I just made no sense to me. But
Yeah.
when I finally decided to rid of those New World Translation books, right?
Yeah, I know, right? That
I
publishing company. Yeah.
Yeah, I got rid of everything, right? I didn't want nothing. I decided to just get a standard Bible.
Okay.
I just wanted to read, I just wanted to understand, right?
Okay.
And I started reading the Bible and I started praying and I started, learning about Jesus because they didn't teach us about Jesus in the JW. We
Hmm.
only acknowledge him once a year.
That's
And
right.
I always
And
remember,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, you remember,
Hmm.
they never
The
talked about it
memorial. Yeah.
once a year,
Yeah.
and they never, it was just kind of like, yep, that's the son, boop, okay, but serve Jehovah. It was
Yeah.
always serve Jehovah or else.
Yeah.
And so when I finally was learning about Jesus, and one day, I think it was last month, my friend goes, "You should watch Passion of the Christ." And I said, "Ooh," because remember
Hmm.
when that movie came out?
Oh yeah. That was early
2004.
2000s. Yeah.
It was 2004. And even though it was faded out, I was like, "Oh, I can't watch that. Can't watch it,"
Ain't that
because
something? Ain't that
yeah,
something?
you
Wow.
can't do
Yeah.
nothing. That's how that I think of I can laugh about it now thinking, man, we couldn't do nothing back then. We were
Right.
that, you know. But when I saw Passion of the Christ and I saw the story of Jesus, and I remember I was bawling my eyes out. I'm thinking, this man died for us? Like all
Hmm.
this time that their organization, because what people don't realize is, for the JWs, they don't, nothing's Bible based. It's a reference, right? It's all the publications.
Yeah.
It's all
That's
the
right.
magazines, it's all the
Yeah.
literature, it's all the books, you
Yeah.
know. And I don't know if they told you, I don't know if you remember, but they told us never to read the Bible. They said like we would never understand it.
Oh, basically, don't try to read and interpret on your own. Make sure you
Yeah.
use our publications to interpret it for you.
Yeah. That
Yeah,
was
for
written by a
sure.
bunch of
Yeah.
men.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because governing
Bible
body
study
knows.
aids.
Oh, I remember that one. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
but no,
Bible.
no, that's what they were all called. Bible study aids. They were
Yeah.
aid you in understanding. No, you're right. There was a book. Oh man.
Wasn't
Aid
there?
to Bible understanding. I think Franz, right? I think Ray Franz helped that book, Aid to Bible Understanding or something. If I don't
Yeah.
recall, if I recall right, but yeah, yeah, yeah.
They had a book
Yeah,
for everything.
don't be trying to do it on your own. Don't do that.
No, do
Yeah.
not try to do it on your own. But and it was very just the magazines and magazines and all these magazines was just like so dark, right? It was nothing like, wow, what a great day to be alive. It was just like, are you ready for Armageddon?
Yeah, no, that's the truth. That's the truth. Armageddon was repeated over and over and over.
Everything, everything. It'd be like, Tim, are you ready for tribulation? I'm like, they were out. These magazines
Yeah,
just come at you like
yeah,
nothing was just like, oh wow, it's a great day to be a JW. Nope, be prepared. They're gonna come
yeah.
after us. Persecution. Those are the
That's
words
right.
we grew up with,
That's
right?
right.
It was never
Repeated
like,
over and over.
yeah, until you believe it, you
Yeah.
know. It was never like, praise God or praise Jesus. It was just like obey. It was just like it was very like dark around it. It was just like obey. And so when I learned about Jesus, when I learned about his story, I was just like, oh my God. I say, you mean to tell me he already died for our sins and we don't have to do all these extra works knocking on your door at 8 in the morning on Saturday?
Right. Right.
You
That's
know what I
right.
mean?
Yep.
And so,
Yep.
and the more I learned about Jesus, the more I learned, I was like, he already died for our sins, regardless of what, people believe, everyone has different
Right.
things. But when I read about Jesus, and I was like, man, he already did all this for us. Why
Hmm.
in the heck do we have all these policies of the JW? Because mind control, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
How else are they
Yep.
going to keep them? How else are they going
Yep.
to keep them? Right. And I remember thinking like, oh my God. So I was just
Yeah,
praying. And I remember just being like, screw this, and that he didn't die on a cross. It was all this stuff. And I was like, no, and so when I finally, read about Jesus, and I'm like, God, I felt so much better. And I felt, even though it's only been 3 months, but I honestly feel that, a lot of weight has been lifted, even after every bad
good,
thing, no matter what
good.
bad has happened, right? I'm
Yeah,
so happy to be, alive,
yeah,
and so I feel like we shouldn't use, or I don't want to use the things that's happened to me, or everything. I still find joy, you know, and
yeah.
I now knowing the truth, knowing that this was a cold, right? And I don't want to look at the years I wasted behind me, right?
That's
And
right.
so I just want to see, there's just so much I want to do. I don't even know where to start. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I want to do the things. I want to learn. I want to do so much. You know what I mean? I want to watch, catch up on these things we didn't get to watch as kids.
yeah.
We have so
Well, you know
much.
what? You starting right now. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, no, please keep going.
I just feel like there's just so much life ahead, and just, whatever time we're permitted, we have one life. You know what I mean? And I just, I hope people just see that whatever question, whatever thought, whatever that little question in your head, it's okay to ask. You
That's
know what I
right.
mean? And to know that, if you really do believe in God, right? He's not this God of just gonna punish you for making a
Right.
mistake, because as
Right.
a JW, there was never grace for anything. It was
Yeah.
like you disobey, punishment, you
That's
know?
right.
And so we're human beings, we're going to make mistakes. You know what I mean? But to know that now, when I pray and when I read the Bible, and I'm just like, I'm doing my best every day, And whereas before, when I was embarrassed to be a JW, right? I hated knocking on the doors, I hated it. I couldn't even defend it if you asked me. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Oh man, ain't that the truth?
If someone were to ask you, like, okay, Tim, like, talk to me. What made you want to be? What are you gonna say?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well,
Well,
tell me
my
about the
parents.
70 weeks or 1914. A lot of them can't even break it down, really.
No, you know what I mean? And so now it's just something that I'm proud of. I love reading about, the Bible and God, and his blessings, and I'm just trying to live my life. I'm not trying to do anything other than, because I know there's a lot of people, when you come out of a really high control religion, right?
Yeah.
There's always that concern, like, oh man, don't be. And I
Right.
said, I'm not in no religion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a relationship with you. I am just trying to learn and understand and be the best human being that I possibly can.
There you
Right.
go. There you go.
And, I'm so happy,
Yeah.
you know, and to know that it wasn't my fault.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And I, I've been holding that in for 30 years. It's- People don't understand, but I've been holding that in for 30 years. And
Yeah.
it feels, I can't tell you how good it feels to just say it.
Yeah. When you say there's so many things I want to do, I was gonna say, you know what? And you say I don't know where to start. You started. You've already started.
Yeah.
Just you
And
telling your story. Um, Man, I'm getting emotional. But anyway, thank you. I just want to say thank you. That you have a special kind of strength that a lot of people uh, do not have. You're a survivor, um, and you now you understand and know that none of it was your fault. None of it was your fault, and that you are all of us really. We are worthy of so much more. We weren't created and made to just be compliant and obey rules. We were made to thrive. We were created to live life to its fullest, and like you said, be the best version of who you are. And
yeah.
that's the journey you're starting now. Congratulations to you for February 19th for doing the research. A lot
Yeah.
of people won't give themselves, you gave yourself permission to do the research and just look up the history of this religion, this cult. And when you do that, you see that really, if you just study just the history, forget
Yeah.
everything in 1950, 60, 70, 80 up till now, just the foundation is on
Yeah.
sand. Just the foundation is all jacked up. So how could it really be um, God's true organization? You know what I mean? I don't even believe in God having a true organization. I don't even believe that. I'm sorry, I
Mhm.
don't.
Yeah.
Um, but you have made strides. You are impeccable. You are great. You are worthy of everything you want in life. Um, and I just want
Thank
to thank
you.
you because I'm sure that is very difficult to tell that story. Um, but what you're going to do, you found a new strength. You found a new part about you now. At 49, you finding a new version of you that's greater than anything in your past. Like you said, you're not going to waste time stuck in that no more. No more.
No,
You
no.
know, your story, I'm sure, is going to help a lot of people. Um, Not just wake up, but give them the courage to, like, you know what? It is something great about me. It is something special about me. And that whatever happened before is not my fault.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah.
And give themselves permission to just, even if, like you said, not, you don't have to look at all the things or whatever, but just look at the foundation. Look what started it.
Yeah.
It was a man in the 1800s, right?
Yeah.
And if they do their history, they know that around that time, all these other religions were popping out. You know what I
That's
mean?
right.
And
That's
so
right.
it was just it literally started, it was not even supposed to be a religion. He just started a publication company and just
That's
wanted people
right.
to follow him.
Yeah.
And so I wish people would just see that and see the foundation, like you said, and know that this was not this is it's a doomsday thing. That's how they get you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. If you even just start with Russell, Russell had nothing to do with Jehovah's Witnesses. He didn't know nothing about a Jehovah's Witness.
No.
Rutherford started that. Russell even said that religion is what did he say? A farce and a what was the words he used? I can't. It's not hitting me now, but I'll probably remember it. And if I do, and when I find it, when I edit this, I'm gonna put it at the bottom. But yeah,
Yeah.
he basically talked down on religion.
Mm-hmm.
He said it was a scam, basically, like it was a farce. Religion is not always what it meant up to, but the company, again, is a business. So when Rutherford
Yeah.
took over, he made the business bigger and got more people to follow. And it turned him into what it is today, a multi-billion-dollar global real
Company.
estate publishing company, with many corporations. And it's funny how they can hit you for smoking, or if you watching bad, watching let's see, I can't say that. What can I say? Watching dirty videos, you know, if you want doing things like that, they'll get you for that. But y'all can't
Mm-hmm.
catch these pedos out here. You can't catch these people out here messing with children. You
No.
know what I mean? Like that kills me how they can't get that, but you can get everybody else for every little violation if they mess up or if they miss meetings and stuff like that. Let me stop because I'll get to going on about that.
And
They
the
get
millions of dollars that paid out already. Millions.
millions of dollars paid out.
Millions.
And it's
You
funny on JW website on their news, they don't put that news on the website,
mm-mm. No.
not the lawsuits that they pay out. They put their victories up. We want a victory, but they won't put up where they had to pay out and settle cases and all that. That's not no. We're not gonna talk about that.
No.
So yeah,
No. But
that
the
they keep
millions of dollars that they have paid out.
that's right.
But
That's
they
right.
can't
To
help
keep
their
it
own, right?
quiet. What's that?
Yeah. They can't help their own, right? But they can pay out
But they can't help
those
their own.
lawsuits.
Ain't that something? Good
Mm-hmm.
point. That's a great point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're gonna
But
be
can't help
poor.
your own people.
No. They're gonna continue being poor, but you guys go out there with your nice tailored suits and fancy watches.
Yeah, yeah. So
They
now
cannot help them.
So you say so you don't affiliate yourself with any religion. You believe in Christ and you
Yes.
follow Christ, you follow the Bible, and that
Yeah.
brings you peace, right?
That just, I mean, it does bring me peace, what I mean? And
Good.
now when I see the cross, I don't see it as pagan, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
and for me, just, when I was telling my friends that like I said, I've had friends for 20 plus years that didn't even know I was a JW. So
Okay.
they're like, "What?" And all this time that you were out there celebrating things, and I said, there was a way I would twist things like that, because my friends like, "But you used
Yeah.
to," and I said, But if you notice, I never allowed it in my home. I would go out and
Right.
do the thing, right? And then I would
Right.
feel guilty,
Yeah.
I would go out there
Yeah.
and do this. But then I always said, as long as it's not in my home. So then, you know what I mean? Like I would not allow any of that. I went out, no Christmas trees, no nothing. It was just, my home was just nothing, right? And
Yeah.
I remember I was even afraid to pray because
Of
I
what?
thought that to Jehovah, I
Uh-huh.
was afraid to pray to Jehovah because I felt that if I prayed, he was
Oh,
going to
to
pull me back
pray.
into that
Okay.
cult.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
didn't want that. And so I was afraid to pray. And so
Yeah.
now I pray. I pray for everyone and I pray for others to, give them the strength to research this cult, because
Yeah.
I want everyone to feel that same relief and that same peace that I have now. It's a huge weight lifted, and to
Yeah.
finally go and see people. I can see you as a person. I'm not
That's
seeing
right.
you as like, well, you're not a JW and you're gonna die, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, I can
Yeah.
see people, and it's a good feeling to just be able to be in the moment and to listen and to pay attention and to make plans. You know what I mean? And that's something that I'm so excited for. And I was telling my friend, I'm like, this year I'm gonna get me the biggest Christmas tree, and I'm gonna get me, everything. And they're just I have like I may just do a bucket list of things I want to do before I turn 50.
You
You
do
know,
that. You do that.
I
Yeah.
feel like I need to just, because there's just so much
You
that I
know,
just and not so focused on time. You know
that's
what I mean?
right.
I don't even want to look at a calculator anymore.
Right.
And so I that's what I find joy in, and I just, I hope, people see this and it gives them a little strength to just say, let me just go and do a
That's
little
right.
research.
That's right. That's
And,
right.
and like we said, we went from faded to freedom.
Yeah. You faded to freedom.
Faded to freedom.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Went
That's
from
what we're
faded to
calling.
freedom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
big difference in that. Like you said, you didn't want to tell nobody who was a witness. You
Mm-mm.
you thought Armageddon was coming, but yet you were still like living a life of somebody who was worldly, but
Worldly.
you still believed in the indoctrination still had you believing that this is really going to still happen. I just know I'm not right yet,
Yeah.
but yeah, oh man, the oh wee.
Can you imagine what's inside
Oh
my
wow.
brain? Just it feels like meatloaf.
Yeah, I know, right? Right, right. I'm so
Mhm.
happy for you, Steph. I truly am. I'm so happy that for one, you got the courage to speak out publicly. A lot of people, they may not believe it anymore and they may leave, but they may not be able to speak out.
Mhm.
And, they may have reasons why, but I say this all the time. You can never go wrong when you are being the real, authentic version of you. When
Yeah.
when you are being you, 100% authentic you can't go wrong. You can never
Yeah.
go wrong with that. And I applaud you. I'm so happy for the journey that you're on now, this new journey. And now look, all of us sometimes it's healing. It's all about healing. We're healing, but at the same time, you're reclaiming your life. You're reclaiming your life.
Yeah.
You're becoming the best version. You're getting your identity back. It's like, or you're getting your identity that you never even had, maybe. A lot
Yeah.
of us never even had an identity. So for you to get that back, I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
Congrats again. I'm so happy for you. I can say it over and over. I am. It's
Oh, thank you.
truly and that's why I like to do this because I think the more people speak out, the more people that will be helped, and the
Yeah.
more people can get healing and go find out like, what's wrong with me? I'm in this religion. I'm supposed to be happy, but I'm not really happy. Because
Yeah.
a lot of current witnesses who are PMOs, they're on YouTube. They're watching a lot of these videos, and a lot of them are just not happy, and they don't really know why because they're supposed to be living the best life, right? Supposed to be the happiest
Yeah.
people on earth, but a lot of them are depressed and going in cycles that they don't understand why, and it's because of the suppression of self. When the
Yeah.
self when you're controlled and you're suppressed and told to be a certain way, it's almost like being programmed like a robot. You never get to be. Your autonomy is gone. So
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I thank you for coming on tonight. Is there anything that you want to tell anyone who might be watching who may have went through horrendous things? Maybe they didn't, but maybe they're on the fence. What kind of word would you want to give anyone watching any encouragement or any advice or anything like that?
I would just say that, that I hope that by watching this, that, whatever feeling you thought that it was your fault, whatever feeling you thought that this was, the true organization, the truth, and, that really, Jehovah's going to come down and strike you down. And I just say there's a reason, I always thought as a kid, all this anxiety, even when I was in therapy, my therapist couldn't figure out why I had as an anxiety. I thought it was
Mm,
my dad left, my ex-husband, my abuse, all this. And then when I realized when I woke up, it was because of this, you know?
yeah, yeah,
And what I wanted to do as a little side note was just like, whatever your faith is, you never question it. So to find out that was a cause of everything that was going on in my life, I want to say give yourself permission. Just
yeah.
Google them. Just research and just see, look around you and know that, you're not alone. You know what I mean? And there is life. As fearful as one may feel, right? Because it's so embedded in you. For some people, they come from generations, and it's, the fear of losing your entire family, to be alone. But that what I found in replacement, even though I'm fortunate that I've not been shunned, is that we have a really great community. We have a really great community for a bunch of XJWs. And I find that I just find comfort in that. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
that's why it's so important the work that you do. You're going out there and using this platform to help people like me share our stories, and I, commend you for that, because, you're putting yourself out there, and all these people that share their platform and, it's not easy, and sometimes, it can feel like defeated. It's like, well, we have the intent to help, but to know that from me, I'm saying it does help, you know?
that's right.
And
Yeah,
so I appreciate you giving me that, you know, a safe space to finally come out and speak on it. I've not had that. I've been hold on to something for this long and to finally talk about it. It's a relief. You have no idea how I'm always going to be thankful for that, for you giving me that opportunity.
yeah. Well, you
You
got a
know,
lot of people to help, and your strength is amazing. Just know
thank
that.
you.
Yeah, just know
Yeah.
that. So thank you,
Thank
Steph.
you.
Uh, we'll talk soon. And
Yeah.
look, you have a YouTube channel. Not you don't have anything here yet, but you will be having some
Yeah.
content, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, I will.
Yeah,
I was telling someone like, I thought you, because I had the video, and like I said, now I'm hoping, and I think that by people seeing this video, they will
yeah,
understand, why it was hard for me to do it to begin with,
yeah, yeah.
because, and I had posted on my Instagram, I did the video and everything, and it was hard, and I just said, they're like, "Where's your video?" And I said, I needed a little hand holding on this one. I mean,
Yeah,
because I'm sharing something that I've never shared before. And
yeah,
so I appreciate you being there and
yeah,
allowing me, because I couldn't do this, I couldn't do this by myself. It's a lot,
yeah.
so, you know, I needed a little hand holding on this one. So I think that by people watching, they'll understand, and right now I'm in the journey of taking people with me and we're gonna figure things out, and so
That's
I'm
right.
excited for
That's
that.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. It's new. It like there's a saying about the when you're healing, the damage that was done was in the past, but it's not about not forgetting about it. It's not letting it control you anymore,
Yeah.
So that's what it's about. So I wish you the best on your journey. You're going to help a lot of people, and I'm sure we're going to talk
Thank you.
again. So
Yeah.
thank you for coming on. All right.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, Steph.
All
You
right.
take care.
You too. Bye.
Thanks for watching, and thank you, Steph, for sharing your story. That was not easy to do, and to share it for the first time with the world took a lot of strength. It took a lot of courage. Steph did say it was okay to let you guys know that uh, she left out something in the interview that's very important, and I think it is too. And that is the fact that the husband she married at 18, who was abusive, he had he was already in prison for 6 years for violating another young lady. So I just want that fact to be out there that she forgot to mention. I know that it wasn't easy to tell. However, I believe her story will help and benefit a lot of people. Just know that no matter what you've been through, if you're feeling stuck, if you feel like you can't get past what happened to you in the past, you can. You can. We all have strength within us to be able to do so, and you have to love yourself first. So thank you, Steph, again for sharing your story. It definitely resonated with me, and I know it's going to resonate with a lot of people out there who have been through similar things. So please, if you feel like you have been in a predicament that you've been holding in, let it out. Heal, reclaim your life, and love you. Until next time, stay free from them cults.